Hey everyone, you're watching We Had That, and today I'm going to talk about the 1983 Wave 2 Masters of the Universe Triclops action figure from Mattel. Mattel had been hugely successful in the toy industry as the maker of Barbie. After passing on arguably the biggest property from the 1970s, Star Wars, Mattel took a shot at mimicking Kenner's success by acquiring the licenses for Battlestar Galactica and Flash Gordon. Unfortunately, even though they were both great toy lines, neither one found much success. Mattel decided that they needed to create a toy line for boys that wasn't based on characters owned by someone else for two reasons. First, they would have to pay licensing, cutting into their profits, and second, the success of the line wouldn't be dependent on a property managed by someone else. After much research, they decided to create a character that would make kids feel like they had the power, and that character became He-Man. When He-Man arrived on store shelves in 1982, it was quickly clear that Mattel had a hit on their hands. The figures were selling so well, Mattel wanted to get a second wave out by Christmas. Wave 2 had only 6 figures, and from what I've read, as well as stories from people who were kids at the time, it sounds like the 6 figures may not have all hit store shelves at the exact same time. If anyone knows about the actual release dates for Wave 2, or even the order of the figure releases of Wave 2, please leave a comment below. But I believe that Trapjaw and Triclops were the last 2 of the 6 figures to arrive in stores. As with many Masters of the Universe figures, Triclops reused a lot of existing parts. His entire body used the same molds as He-Man, but he had a newly designed head, as well as a new harness and a new sword. I've always thought it was great when a figure had pieces that opened or lit up or fit together in some way. So I thought it was cool that you could put Triclops' sword into a slot in the back of his harness. Triclops also had a pretty cool gimmick with his head. Although it wasn't exactly the same as the 3 different rotating faces on the Man-E-Faces figure, it was a similar concept. Triclops had a circular visor that could be rotated to give him one of 3 different eyes. Also, the vintage Triclops figure came with a glow-in-the-dark ring that a kid could wear. From what I understand, the ring that came with Triclops was originally supposed to be part of a fan club offer. Although it didn't work out with the fan club, they had already manufactured the rings, so they just threw them in with the next 2 figures to be released, which happened to be Triclops and Trapjaw. Just so there was no confusion about this character, the tagline below his name on the package stated that Triclops was evil and saw everything. According to the back of his package, Triclops had a daytime eye, a nighttime eye, and an eye that could see around corners. The artwork on the top of the back of the card seems to imply some kind of telescopic feature on the blue eye, but that isn't expressly stated. In the Filmation cartoon, Triclops had a circular eye, a triangular eye, and a square eye. One eye could see in the dark, one was telescopic, and one could see through solid objects. He could also see in every direction at the same time, making it difficult for his enemies to sneak up on him. In the cartoon, Triclops was a more serious character than Skeletor's other henchmen, who were usually much more bumbling. He was one of the only characters powerful enough to fight He-Man himself. Often teaming up with Evil-Lyn, Triclops appeared in only 8 episodes of the Filmation cartoon and 1 episode of She-Ra called Reunions. Despite his limited number of appearances, Triclops was included in the very first episode to air, The Diamond Ray of Disappearance. In this episode, Skeletor quickly introduces the viewer to several of his main henchmen. When he calls on Triclops, he mentions his gamma vision, which allows Triclops to see around solid objects. Triclops is only in a few scenes in this episode, but he does briefly get He-Man in a chokehold. However, he doesn't use any of his eye powers when fighting He-Man, and mostly serves as a background henchman. In the episode The Time Corridor, Triclops uses his Distavision to see He-Man coming and warn Skeletor. Other than that, he mostly just hung around a little bit in this episode, not really doing anything. It is interesting to note that this episode is the only one to include the character Fang Man, who was later included in the Masters of the Universe Classics line. In The Royal Cousin, Triclops and Evil-Lyn have been tasked by Skeletor to plant a globe under the royal palace, which will grow and destroy the palace. He-Man stopped them, but Skeletor sent them back to try again. When they return, Triclops uses his gamma vision to see what He-Man and Man-at-Arms are up to. They watch them testing Man-at-Arms' new rock softener, and Evil-Lyn decides to steal it to weaken the walls of Castle Grayskull so that they can get in. But He-Man stops them again. Triclops listens to Evil-Lyn plot to conquer Eternia while Skeletor is away at the beginning of the episode Ordeal in the Darklands. Though he isn't really in the episode much at all, Triclops does appear again near the end when he uses a laser eye to shoot at Teela while she tries to escape. Triclops sits at a table with Skeletor and his other henchmen for just a few seconds at the beginning of the episode Prince Adam No More, but that's his entire appearance in this episode. And if you think that's a minor appearance, Triclops is in The Great Books of Mystery for only about 6 seconds along with a bunch of other henchmen, and I don't think he has a single word of dialogue. Although he's just one of Skeletor's henchmen again, Triclops can be seen flying a sky sled along with Skeletor, Beastman, and Trapjaw in the episode Betrayal of Stratos. They're attacking the bird people, and Triclops appears again stealing the egg of Avion after Stratos has been banished from the city in this episode. Triclops' final appearance in the Masters of the Universe cartoon is in the episode 3 on a Dare, where we see him with Trapjaw, Merman, and Beastman for a few seconds in the last quarter of the episode. He almost uses one of his eyes, but inexplicably doesn't. In addition to his appearances in the cartoon, Triclops also appeared in 7 of the mini-comics. The Terror of Triclops was the first mini-comic to include Triclops and was originally included with the Triclops action figure. Triclops was featured on the cover, and as you can see, the way that he's drawn doesn't match the final toy version. Skeletor brings in Triclops as a mercenary to take on He-Man. Triclops uses one of his eyes to temporarily blind He-Man, but of course, He-Man beats Triclops in the end. Skeletor is angry with Triclops for losing the battle with He-Man, but before he can do anything about it, Triclops sees him with his Dista vision and leaves the scene. In the Tale of Teela mini-comic, Triclops was once again featured on the cover, and once again, his outfit didn't match the toy. Triclops wasn't featured as much as he was in the Terror of Triclops, but he was included a fair amount. Triclops makes a couple of minor appearances in The Power of Point Dread, where he is shown wearing a costume somewhere between the original comic appearance and the toy. Although the artwork of him is pretty cool, he doesn't use any of his powers of his 3 eyes, but there is a good action image of him fighting Man-at-Arms. Although Triclops does appear in 3 panels of the issue Double-Edged Sword, they are very minor appearances. In the entire issue, he doesn't speak or use any of his eye powers a single time. He's just another henchman of Skeletor filling out the ranks in this issue. Despite showing up on the cover of the issue The Clash of Arms, this issue doesn't make use of Triclops' eyes any more than The Power of Point Dread or Double-Edged Sword, but at least he gets to speak and somewhat seems to be leading Skeletor's minions in this issue. In the issue The Obelisk, both He-Man and Skeletor try to figure out the powers of a mysterious obelisk that appears on Eternia every year. Triclops appears in numerous panels and even makes reference to using his telescopic eye to read the writing at the top of the obelisk, but He-Man stops him before he can read anything. Other than references to his telescopic ability, which he doesn't get to use, Triclops could have been replaced with pretty much any other henchman for this issue. I believe his last appearance in the mini-comics was in the issue Hordak, the Ruthless Leader's Revenge. Although Triclops only appears on 2 pages of this issue and doesn't use any of his eye powers, it does seem like Skeletor treats Triclops as a second in command. Triclops also warns Skeletor not to trust Hordak. I'm not sure how many of the Masters of the Universe books by Golden Books in the 1980s included Triclops, but he was at least included in New Champions of Eternia, where he appears as one of Queen Marlena's fellow crew members from Earth, along with Evil-Lyn and Beastman. Masters of the Universe was hugely successful for Mattel for much of the 1980s, and the Filmation cartoon was extremely popular. However, as the end of the 80s approached, the popularity of the toy line began to fade. A live-action theatrically released movie was produced in an attempt to cash in on the earlier popularity and hopefully breathe new life into the Masters of the Universe franchise, but unfortunately, the budget kept getting cut and filmmakers had to make a lot of compromises to even get the movie finished. When it came out, the movie was generally considered to be pretty terrible and didn't even come close to making back its budget at the box office. Triclops was not featured in the movie at all. However, starting in the early 2000s, Masters of the Universe did return. And although Triclops wasn't a main character like He-Man or Skeletor, who appear in every line released for Masters of the Universe, Triclops was included in various forms in many of the Masters of the Universe lines that have appeared over the last 25 years. What do you think of the Masters of the Universe Triclops figure? Did you have him as a kid? Was he a favorite of yours, or was he just a random figure who didn't see much action? Tell me in the comments below. Also, please give this video a like, share it on social media, and if you enjoy my content, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notifications bell. And one last thing, if you collect toys, you should know about ToyLanta, one of the biggest toy shows in the southeastern United States, held annually just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Visit ToyLanta.com for more information. As always, thanks for watching.